It's amazing, like how the coaches, they project this certain personality with their group. Like they have such a strong person. I feel like that's what I would hire. Like I feel confident in my X's and O's or my ability to flow a game and call the game, and that's cool. That's all pretty easy. But I really believe that the kids will take on your personality,
For
and so you might
sure.
want to hire some dudes that are high personality guys, and knowing that you can just run some basic stuff.
Well,
And
think of all the high freaking those kind of guys that we got to be around over the years. I mean,
I'm
I
telling you,
we could start by talking about like Bobby Sierra,
yeah,
and talking about a DB coach who, was as good a DB as he was a coach. That
right,
kind of deal. Bobby could
hmm
freaking play. Bobby and I played flag football after we got out of college and
yeah,
played for all those years, and he played corner, and he was every bit of Lester Hayes for his little
yeah,
freaking goofy ass. And Bobby, he could play all of it. But
uh-huh.
what a fucking dynamic coach as far as his guys being motivated and enthusiastic,
Right.
and had that freaking that fuck you mentality with
hmm
like cool haircuts. I mean, those guys those guys were Bobby's guys, and Edmund's guys were
Wait, I mean, Bobby
clearly.
was so great at, like, we're gonna get that break at the end. I mean, the break at the end of the practice, pick hit and all that shit. I was so, to add on to Chuck's story, I was his GA basically. I was the assistant DB coach kind of while I was doing full time sophomore work. But on Wednesday nights and Thursdays, I was rolling with Bobby, and just his insistence that we all get together. It was very strange. It's like kissing your mom before bed or something. Like, you have to do it.
Well,
It
I,
was
you know, I,
incredible. Like, and I was like,
again,
wow.
and there are people that had to pay for some of the behavior, and tackling the goalpost wasn't always the
Yeah.
best story to tell, other than the fact if you got past being paying all my respects to the guys that got banged up and that it wasn't
Right.
a good thing. There was something about that group that those guys ran into that thing like they
Right.
really, that you could even run into that thing hard enough to get hurt.
Right.
You had to believe, and again, that's a mixed twisted message for some of you out there,
Right.
but I can re-explain it in another pod if you if you make a comment
Yeah.
down below and say something.
Yeah.
I'll
Ask
say
if
it
you have
too.
a question, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and
And
he
then
was a guy.
Edmund, and then Edmund
He
Acuna.
was
I
he
mean,
was he was a, he, Bobby was a huge technician. Bobby
mhm,
Bobby knew how to bend, and he knew how to his leverage and stuff was his deal. And he did a great job with those guys of being tacklers. And that he was Bobby's personality was then. And then you get a guy like Edmund who is absolutely a student of the game,
right.
but is wild man personified. Like,
Mhm,
I will tell you every single time you look at me, we will not lose to those guys. Don't think
right.
for 1 second that that's going to be your excuse. We will not
He
lose
was
to those
on
guys.
message.
Oh man, I did. Like I said, they competed. How many fights in the coach's office did
Yeah.
Bobby and Edmund have in a couple years span?
Let me let me
He
let me
coached
let me
wide receivers.
highlight one thing about Bobby. So when I was a senior, I was a safety, but when we got into the goal line situation where it was going to be press, nose to nose press coverage, I was the corner, and one of our corners came out. So I was on. Usually they take out the safety and bring in a linebacker. They took out a corner, brought in a linebacker. It was 100% because I have gigantic long arms. My arms are longer than my height. My wife calls them gigantic monkey arms. And so my ability to jam has gotten me out of a lot of trouble. And in the years following in college, it was a thing that I literally could rely on my length to help me out of defensive problems. So, anyways, so I come back.
Bobby was long too.
So here's the interesting part. I hope that we're nerding out and there's people that dig this, because when I came back from college, I felt like I had learned a lot and I developed myself in a lot of ways, and I was a hell of a DB and blah blah blah, and I could play some nickel, all that. When I came back, you guys were putting in a cover two man concept and a cover two zone concept, and I was so excited because it was all about routing guys. And I know, again, this is football, but you're moving guys toward the coverage, you're pushing guys into coverage. Somebody else is going to handle it. You want to get them closer to the safety where they can put a lick on them or they can make a play on the football. You don't want to widen the field. You want to shrink the field in the zone concept for sure. And so I'm like all excited, man. I'm like, Bob, we're gonna teach him jam. He's like, yeah, let's go. We're gonna do this.
It was in answer to 3 and 4 wides, in those when that was
Right.
all we were trying to. Everybody was catching up with trying to figure out how to play it. Go ahead.
So I just cannot wait to show off my college skills and my high school skills to give myself some credibility because I would always stumble over my whatever, scheme or whatever. And he gets the boys out there and they get in their stance and they put their hands behind their back and the receivers are forced to make some zigzagging routes and the DBs are forced to move their body in front. Whereas I would be able to reach out and reroute a guy maybe a yard away from me. Now we had guys moving their fucking physical bodies into the guy's path. And I went, we're literally teaching these guys to jam without their hands. I want you to think about that. I want you to drive a car without putting your hands on the steering wheel. I want you to write a poem without having a pen in your hand. It was the greatest. I went, okay, now I got some shit to learn. And that was the beginning. I thought I knew a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. And that was that light bulb. And he gave that to me. And then on the other side, just to tack on to Ed Acuna, his ability to get guys, because he was on message so much with these weird little things. Guys carrying around tennis balls and guys doing these strange drills and these little awkward things. They were planting seeds regularly to the
They
point
were
where
too much fun bunch, man. They were a bunch of 5'4" freaking guys. It was great. Yeah.
and then when we talk about a guy like Mick Foster having the mentality to be the double tight guy, to be the backside of the double. I mean, we all knew he was the backside, but for him to be
the best first down touchdowns that we ever had were underpass with him, catching underpass. Yeah.
But for him to
because he would block down because he would fucking smack the fucking guy.
It was a legit move for him, Chuck. He was blocking down like legit.
At what, 5'7", 150 pounds?
At the very best. Very best, for sure. And the catching of the way they did the ball work, where their hands were so,
that was one of the things. And Edmund studied and played with the football. Edmund was a guy who freaking had a football in bed with him as a coach, trying to figure out, and he was constantly talking about his, working on hand stuff. So
when you were talking about coach having the guys roll around on the ground, the running backs roll around on the ground, the first thing that popped in my mind was Edmund with the balls, just touching the ball around the head, around the leg. I mean, just touching. And and then having that force of nature sort of character, just he was a cartoonish in some ways where the kids could buy into it.
Oh, are you kidding?
They wanted to be fucking
quoted
heroes.
history and quoted history and was one of the best read people that I have ever known.
I didn't even think
him
of
and Leonard
that.
Mora,
That's right.
who's the next point of conversation in this conversation of guys that are those leaders that in their own right, they are great leaders. And they could have been, again, if you said, would you follow that guy? Yeah, he's only the wide receivers coach. But if he said we were on a mission, you'd follow that guy.
Right.
And you'd follow a guy like, and Bobby, who would, Bobby had some of the greatest stories that I can't tell on the history of mankind.
Even with the explicit button pushed, we can't say those stories.
although it had a lot to do with no, I can't even say that. Yeah. All right. So
if anybody wants to meet up, we can talk about
it. Yeah, but you gotta buy a t-shirt or subscribe and then show me the subscribe picture of subscribe. Put it in the comments and say something to us,
I mean,
otherwise
I think the coaches that can make themselves accessible, and, for me, my persona, my archetype is that grind, that relentless fucking grind, the relentless pursuit of perfection. Just we can do it, but in a positive way. I started out obviously being a negative guy. Started out just I'm trying to put my foot up your ass because you're a great athlete. No. It's just every day getting better, adding more things, adding wrinkles, adding this. You can do. Coach, the varsity doesn't do that. That's okay. We're sophisticated. You're smart.
You can have an enormous amount of knowledge of the game, and there are guys that cannot get kids to play, cannot get guys to perform, and that is such a combination of all those things that we're talking about, which is why I would hold Bobby who's been coaching for the Stags out at Claremont College
Yeah.
for the last
Legend.
25 years,
Yeah.
and is an unbelievable freaking lifelong coach. The Edmund Acuñas, who could have coached at any level at
Any
all,
level.
and because of his commitment to do the work and to know as much as he could, and then he could teach it. He could get guys to respond. And the lore is, and I'm sure there's coaches all over the nation that have guys like this, that when they succeed, are guys that get the most out of their guys, and they have a leadership quality of themselves, that their groups are fucking competing at the high level. And Leonard Mora, I'm going to say 20-year LAPD
Yeah.
officer, and
Probably. Yeah.
original crash members, and guys that are unbelievably, the respect level for those guys, is not in question.
Right.
Except by the private investigators that follow them around.
Yeah. But he also had a professional career playing for the Centurions, the LAPD Centurions.
Right, and then had a career coaching up in Canada when he left here.
That's
and
right.
in those years that he coached with us, he had that way of, again, those guys would follow him, and it wasn't just their guys. Our team would follow those guys, so there was always a fucking voice that was able to speak to the different factions of our brain at a high level, and so there were moving experiences on a regular basis, and that was true. I'm not sure everybody has had that experience and or can relate to that, but when that happens, you create championship.
I really got that. I felt weird when I left St. Paul and I coached on some random staff, when I started getting my degree and I started like being able to be I had drifted away from St. Paul. There was different coaches that I didn't know anything about or whatever. And I would look at guys who were like, it was strictly, I'm a coach because it's the best seat in the house. And I would be so fucking sad. What are you out here for if you're not going to coach the guys for fucking, we have a 3-hour practice, then that's fucking 180 minutes of coaching, and if you got to stay after,
ask Larry Del Rosa.
That's Larry D. Yeah. I mean, and if you have to, at least in my opinion, if you have another 10 minutes and freaking stay out there for another 10 minutes and get it coached.
Well, that's why guys get hired and last. And there's that great inspiration of, there's some staffs that people have been fortunate to be a part of that have 8 or 9, 10, 12 alpha males who can hold their own in almost any room at different levels of experience, which makes the synergy of it all really, again, positive for everybody, even the old guys.
Right. But the difference is, if I was to talk to those guys and say, hey, Coach Steve or whoever, you're the running back coach. We put the ball on the ground 3 times. Well, they dropped the ball, not me. I'm like, no, those are your fucking guys.
You ready? Hold on. I'm going to give you the best Steve fucking impression of answering.
I don't know who Steve is. There's no Steve, by the way.
No, and Steve would tackle you. Steve would tackle you right now if he could.
Yeah,
and go, that's why we fucking did all that shit. Because those motherfuckers fucking carried the ball and fucking ran for 3,000 fucking yards rushing the football because Willie ran the power of the trap. And that's why
I forgot that the guy's name was Steve. I didn't mean Steve.
Oh man. Oh, okay. Sorry. This all started with Steve Fogel, and that's a real true impression of a Steve Fogel. All these guys, all you guys, those guys. But again, on that staff, again, we had Miguel Almeida, who was the head coach, who for 35 years has been the defensive coordinator at Redlands High School.
Right.
And has made an impact on that program, a lifetime commitment, and grew up his family there. And that type of guy was the guy. Casey Morales has been coaching since we left him fucking a long time ago when he was a little boy, and went on to be the athletic director for a million years. And those kind of staffs with that many guys. And like I said, we're not the only ones that had those things, but those things are life-changing experiences.
But, I guess the what I want to talk about is the fact that there is a coach that doesn't do anything, best seat in the house, that will blame the kids. And then the coaches that we're talking about would take responsibility and ownership of that group and everything about their preparation and everything about their performance. And it was difficult because you say my guys,
Well,
and
yeah, in public they would.
right.
In their own personal meetings, those guys got tortured.
Right. But I mean,
The-
but
there
but I
was
mean,
I mean, the responsibility that those guys had would, again, behind closed doors. Those coaches presented, like they took responsibility for things.
mhm.
You're right,
They were
absolutely.
great leaders in that way. So you had,
No,
8 leaders plus a guy on top, and plus the school administration or what. I mean, there was just no place where you can hide, and then you had a guy like me who's just finding guys hiding in the shadows and digging them out, or really going after one or two individuals like Big Daddy Joe Ledesma that Angel Garcia talked about in the fourth or fifth podcast, who's inspirational to that guy. When it came time to run sprints on Wednesdays,
well,
I
and
went
no, and
fucking after that. I thought he was going to strangle me a couple times, and that's fine.
I'll tell you what. In watching Joe Ledesma and Ryan Granillo
Yeah.
stand up at tackle and tight end, and we're going to run the power for the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, all the way through the 15th time of that drive,
Right.
and go, I got you, and I got
Yeah.
you too, because we're going to double team you. All right,
It's on.
get ready. Here comes the back.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Poor Sean McKinney and those guys, when it was their turn to kick out, it was, but everybody did it,
Yeah.
and those guys, that was results of that kind of, there was nowhere to hide, like you said.
Yeah.
The leadership came at them every single time somebody spoke on that staff, and every time somebody wanted to go, hang on, coach, yeah, I got something, and it was always inspiring and pointed, and the way that those guys spoke was the way that we spoke.
Right.
And that was a clear indication that, again, that we had it for 4 years, and they were our fourth
And that
year.
that ruined me because even I got to speak, and I was screaming, tears in my eyes on Wednesday night practice sometimes. And I got to speak. Why would Miguel Almeida let me speak? There's no time. I mean, poor kids would take a knee for 15
Well, he
minutes.
saw something in you, and now we look back, and
No,
it's
but I mean, come on, that's not
all
good.
clear. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it
I
was
mean,
for, because you were going to be a great coach, in your own right.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
had something to say in the St. Paul, really, really.
But you're right. You got to say,
I got to.
and there could have been a million ways for a guy to freaking say, and there are staffs and a lot of staffs where you fucking don't get to say, and again, that's the quality of what we're talking about in terms of that leadership that transcends, that ego, and the ability to be able to check your ego enough. Truly, it's not just thing you tap on the freaking deal, although it is in our office. But
Right.
I think that's a, metaphorically, you really have to be good at knowing yourself well enough to, continue to check your ego enough to inspire everybody else to have great leadership as well.
Why does that's the question. Why do all those alpha guys listen to Coach Omedo, the head coach? Why what made them want to do that, or what made them willing to do that?
Because he's the one that hired him, and he's going to be the one that fired him. That's a great question.
I think my answer is he's the most pure-hearted human being. There was such a true north there.
Yeah.
Because none of I don't. I'd like to speak for all of us.
You got to understand, Tommy. It was a series of events that not necessarily had been proven. Miguel came and knocked on my door, and I was just in the process of getting at least in trouble at my job, because I was at home as a salesman, that I should have probably been downtown at the time that I was home.
Right.
And we got into a deal where my boss showed up at my house, and I had a home office, and he came in, and we had a conversation where he was disappointed that I was home and I wasn't working hard enough, and that wasn't, and I was like, oh man, you gotta understand, I came home because I had, I got a phone call and I had to meet somebody. Well, it turned out to be Miguel Almeida, who drove up in that parking lot right next to my house and got out, and we stood there for, a few hours having a conversation. I'm going to take this job. I need you to come along with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fuck, that sounds good. I'm in trouble right now at this job.
In the doghouse.
Yeah, no, that was where I went back to school and worked UPS as a night job, and raised my, children, and it helps raise my children. But Yeah,
I just
it was
think
but but here's the end of that. It was a time when I trusted him. So when we had those conversations about really making a commitment to this deal, I went to Edmund and and then Bobby, and we got that
yeah,
deal. And he had, Casey was already in that group, and and there was had been coached by Miguel, and
yeah.
so there was that ebb and flow. I mean, getting Sergio was a unbelievable. Sergio, the head coach at Sierra Vista High School currently.
He wasn't the first year though, right?
Who wasn't? No,
Sergio
Sergio was
wasn't
the
on that
last
first.
year.
Yeah, he wasn't with
Sergio
me.
coached 1 year at the end with the
Yeah,
championship guys,
right, right.
and yeah, but um,
There
yeah,
was an
I mean,
evolution. Yeah,
it was an evolution of guys that trusted going in. So there was a real quick synergy where when you trust like that, you haven't seen each other for a long time. It's not like you're all together and then you came together, and it just automatically felt better together than it
right,
did. I go home. I couldn't wait to get back to the field.
right.
I couldn't wait to get back amongst those guys, those conversations and those
Mhm.
deals. And we'd sit around and we'd stay late and drink beers and hang
Right.
out and have these, unbelievable football conversations in and amongst coaching kids and getting kids, to be able to perform that.
Mhm.
I mean, you just love being in that atmosphere. You love
Yeah,
being with
the
those
staff looked a
guys.
lot different in 4 years. A little bit
Oh,
different.
it sure did.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it
because if
did.
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember wishing when I had come back to coach in '90. I was like, man, I wish Coach Edmund was on the staff, and I wish that I got to be coached by Coach Edmund, or whatever. Like I yeah, there's some guy. I mean, I love my staff. Don't get me wrong. You guys are fucking warriors, but like, I mean, it got good. It got fucking like I like to hang around with those guys, and then
Yeah, well, and we, when in the year that we went to the championship, and it was there, we only had six guys, three on offense and three on defense coaches, which wasn't the case earlier on,
a
and
spectacular defensive assistant though.
right,
GA.
there's no doubt, yeah, yeah. No, but it was again it was that
Yeah,
bonus thing that you get in those championship
yeah.
years where you go that's a guy that
Have to have
at
someone.
the
Yeah.
again l- significantly at the bottom of the food chain, significantly at the bottom of the totem pole, and yet made a significant, it was like talking to Chris Radvansky, made you
Yeah.
guys made significant impacts that again are things that push a team over the hump, they get that next level. And to have it, the synergy that everybody was a part of. That's why Radvansky, it just pumps me up. And I'm so glad he's got
Yeah.
Chris Radvansky is our number what, Tom?
He's,
What number is he?
well, he's number 3, but that's
No,
only in
40,
24
no,
hours.
40, 20. What
Oh, he's
he's number
number 45.
45. Okay. He's
Yeah.
number 45 in our first season of 50.
Yeah.
And he's a good one. So listen to him and even
Yeah.
fast forward a little bit and check it out. If we were
Yeah.
better, we'd have it all cut up for you and just the small bites that everybody can handle. But maybe you could take a few minutes and listen
Yeah.
to a guy that's really inspirational and got over a wheelchair and
Mhm.
fought his way up and down in crutches in the sideline to inspire a group of people that he had faith in too, and was a
Right.
part of that deal where that was a significant impact on that team. That again, everybody can tell their own stories, but there's a lot of them.
There was no. You got to the point by that time in 1990 season where there was no fucking where to go. There was nowhere to hide. We always say that shit as coaches. We always say that, we say it in war movies and we say it in cop movies. Nowhere to hide, and there just was no fucking where. And then all of a sudden, I would show up on this motherfucking Chris would sweat. You guys, anybody who's St. Paul, we had those blazers. There would be sweat stains on the blazer, and the guy's 125 pounds. I don't know how much fucking sweat he had in his body. And then the next year, I got to know him. Like me and him were the only homies left, and he would fucking broke my heart. He broke. I would look down. I remember staring at his Vans all the time. He wore Vans before the big Vans craze, and they
Right.
would be fucking worn at a 90-degree angle on the toe. Remember that, Chuck? Like
Yeah, no,
because he
I
would be just
absolutely do.
fucking dragging his feet and pressing
That's what I
off.
mean. What doesn't come across in his podcast is that he makes it almost sound like he was on using the soles of his feet to walk around. He
Oh no.
wasn't. He drug himself around by his arms and
Right.
his crutches, which was just again
And
another
every time I looked at him, and this is going to be, and everybody that knows Chris Urbanski,
inspirational.
everyone's going to remember this. If you tried to look at him in his eyes, his glasses were so cloudy for whatever reason. I don't know if it was muck on there or if it was sweat from the
Well,
back.
not only that, but he was like Matt.
Defrost.
He was like Matt with he'd have one eye
Yeah.
going one way, and he'd look all crazy. And
I don't know how he saw through his glasses. Because I wear
no,
glasses
I
now.
get
I'm like constantly cleaning them and putting them on. I'm like, that fucking guy can never get a
Well,
contact.
and again, if anybody gets anything out of what we've just been talking about, and we'll put up some cool pictures, we'll
Yeah.
give you a chance to meet some of these guys that we're talking about. But that synergy of a staff that was able to go from top to bottom of alpha males who could
Mhm.
survive together. Again, there were some fist fights, but
Sure.
I never got punched by any of my coaches, and I'm really glad about that. I figured we were a little older and we had a chance to, create the environment for that to happen. But
You
but
cared
be
enough.
out of the mix. But and Miguel as a leader, as a head coach, the going to bat for his guys, whether it was things
Yeah.
that happened constantly around school, around after practice, before practice, guys running, guys being, there was constantly people going, "Hey Miguel, what's going on with your guys? What are they doing? Do those guys do this or do that and do the other thing?" And he completely
The buck stopped
shielded
with
us
him.
from all that, yeah, and handled it all the way he did. I got to tell the story of our Bishop Montgomery experience, which
Yeah.
if you listen to this and you go, I want to know more about that, put it in the comments.
Right.
But the that part of the story, you tell people that kind of stuff, and it automatically, uh, you can't explain enough not to be bullies and fucking
Mhm.
fighter guys and all that kind of stuff. But there was such an honor in that whole deal, and every single one of the guys that fought each other or fought the fight that almost came to blows ultimately would be there in a second if you called them on the phone and had them come to you. And when we walked on the football field, there was such a focus on none of the stuff that happened behind the scenes mattered. There was a oneness to our coaching style and our coaching efforts that again, we spoke the same language. The kids spoke the same language. The new people, the guys, the Radvancies, the Tom Gordons, all learned how to speak the language. And
Right.
and man, we were 15 solid fucking coaching influences,
Right.
intact on a
I mean, we
daily.
haven't even talked about the lower level guys. I mean, some incredible human beings on the lower level, just legendary guys. I mean,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
I just, and I just felt like number one, it, so I felt that we were all needing that compass that Coach Omedo had. And just even if it was just 1 degree off north, we were all 1 degree off north or 5 degree or 45 degrees off north. And you could always count on Coach Omedo to, if you needed it and you wanted it, he would give it to you. He would say, "Yeah, you got to do this right. You got to do this right. You got to do this." Is nope. I mean, you're asking me, so I'm telling you that's. And
Right.
you know what? Sometimes I need you to do something. He didn't demand a lot. He let his ponies run, which I thought was spectacular. And he took some serious lumps. I mean, he did not have gray hair when he started coaching in '87. He had some gray hair by the time we got to '90. And I was like, I just love that. And that, to me, that's what.
Physically the strongest bear man I've ever
Oh,
known.
maybe
You know,
there's a percentage of that, right? Nobody wanted to mess with Coach Omeda because he'd slam you.
dude,
And
and did made an example of me, and I've told you that story before,
yeah,
where he picked me up and threw me down on the table, and I was as tough as anybody in that room. There's no doubt that and I went, oh, he can handle me. He
attention,
handled me. There wasn't
attention.
just yeah. I didn't have any choice to get slammed. But again, that being said, we'd watch him in the weight room. He was a power lifter in the early
He'd go
days,
for it.
and so you'd watch him in there doing Russian fucking snatches and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and you just go, yeah, that guy could really fucking hurt you, you know.
Yeah.
And he was the nicest, like you said when we started this conversation. Miguel Almeida was the most respectful, kind, caring, and loving person that I've ever coached with, that had the tenacity of a guy that could lead a staff and a group of guys to a championship that, you know, he did, and has every respect. Like, there's some guys that don't like me, and there's some guys that don't like you.
Not at
There's some
all.
guys
Yeah.
that don't like Bobby and Edmund. There's some guys that had to be the wrath guys, you know, the guys
Yeah.
that got fucking set down, the guys
For
that
sure.
didn't get their freaking dreams because, you know, coach fucked them around, but really you fucked yourself around. You know,
Right.
there's all those guys, and you know, but everybody loves Miguel, and everybody has, you know, knows that you know, he was the straw that turned the you know,
Stirred the
stirred
drink.
the drink in that deal. You know,
He was the straw and the cup. He held you guys together.
well,
Too.
can you imagine? Again, I won't go into the
Yeah. No. Of
second level
course.
stories where
Of
we
course.
tell things that, you know, that, you know, I think the statute of limitations is about a lot of those things. But you know,
If you
those guys.
guys want to
But
bring something up, put it in the comments.
yeah, if you got a story that
You
you
guys
think
want
you've
a
heard
legendary
before,
story?
I'm sure some of you guys have heard some of those stories before, that you go, make us tell them on
We
the
can
air.
do
You
a
know,
fake, true.
I'm telling you, yeah. Put a comment in the comments, and then subscribe. All right, and go, hey, I've subscribed and I put a comment in the comment, motherfucker. Now I want to hear about your bullshit stuff that you're talking about. Even if you're like a survey guy or a modern day guy, or,
Yeah.
you know, again,
As long as you
you know,
subscribe.
those are the only guys that talk a lot. All my guys still talk a lot of shit, but not the guys from back in our day.
People don't believe me how much success we had against Modern Day and Bosco and Survey. Like I mean, hey, hats off to freaking Amat. They went toe to toe and then some, and they beat us, you know, but not, we didn't
The,
get beat by anybody else. You
the
know?
evolution of the rotation of it all has been brilliant. You know, St. Paul was the you know, the 70s, and in 81 won the championship,
Yeah.
and then Amat took over in the
The
first
80s.
like state championship, or you know, 15th game kind
Yeah.
of thing, was Amat that they played
Mm-hmm.
against. I'm going to say Reseda, no, Silmar. I think they
Silmar.
played
I think
against
it's
you.
Silmar.
Yeah, and it was Paredes that won that deal, and Mark Paredes was, you know, a
St. Paul guy.
Paul guy, and the right and left-handed ambidextrous
Yeah.
quarterback that he was.
And then Modern Day got the ball going in the 90s super good.
They did, yeah. Well, and then Survey banged in for a little while and got two of them in 3 years or something like that, and you know, that guy's back over at Survey now, and that's kind of a neat thing.
Look, when I tell people that St. Paul was 26-0 against St. John Bosco, they look at me like I am batshit. I go, we had
That's
never
nobody can
lost
think
to
back
them
that long. There's not enough people that are old enough for you to tell.
in history. The history of the school, they had never be, you know, I'm not talking about Loyola. Loyola was freaking war every year. You never knew. But Bosco was like a fucking tune-up game. Honestly, even when they had Oscar Meza and those cats, we still beat them. They went to the CIF championship game.
Yeah, they tied Crespi.
They played Crespi and
Tied.
Leonard Russell. No, who was the Crespi guy? Leonard Russell, I think. Right?
Yeah.
He went to Cal, and we still beat them that year. That was their freaking one of their two losses that year. Was freaking goofy St. Paul in the week 4. You know, like, I mean, people don't understand. So the other thing I was going to say about that was, I think of Coach Omeda as being very Christ-like, but when I came to St. Paul, it was a place.
Say that again, Tommy. Emphasis. That's important, because that really, if you're not paying attention and you think this guy Olmedo, that's part of his deal. So.
Yeah, he was very, very Christ-like. He embodied everything about
Right.
the New Testament that I was super into, and we've talked about my journey as well.
Right.
But I when I was on I figured out something from an early age. If I got in a schoolyard fight or a scrap, I had a couple choices with the guy that I just kicked his ass. So I would kick the kid's ass, or he would kick my ass, whatever the case may be. And it's a schoolyard fight, so, you know, it's nothing big. But if I picked that kid up and dusted him off, that guy was loyal to me forever. That guy would walk into traffic for me. If I treated him like shit and, you know, did world star, fucking danced over him and freaking kicked dirt on his face and spit on him, then that guy I'll be looking over my shoulder for the rest of the year. That guy's gonna get me. He's gonna get me with a pencil. He's gonna fucking trip me. He's gonna pants me when I'm wearing my gym shorts. Something's gonna happen. That guy's gonna get me.
Right.
But if I treat that guy with respect, and for some reason, and you tell me if this is leadership or not, because forever I know that I beat that guy. I whipped his ass. I punched him in the nose, and that was it. And he knows that. And that's all that I have. That's the only score that mattered for me. So I could always lead that guy. I was never afraid of that guy. It never bothered me. So what I'm saying is when I went to St. Paul, that was the first, when I played Pop Warner football, fighting was a no-no. You were banished for fighting when I played Pop Warner football. And that was uncomfortable for me. When I went to St. Paul, there would be a fight a day because you cared enough. There would be some kind of little skirmish, little rugby falling on the ground. Okay. And that was it. And I loved it. I love that. I was like, oh, this is
there's no doubt that back in the day that St. Paul was a gladiator camp,
Right.
I mean, it was a place where the gladiators went to.
But because of you guys and because of Coach Omedo, who was there when I was a freshman, there was no hard feelings. I would wrestle a guy, or I'd work one in on a guy, and we would do our thing, and hey, hats off. At least you stood up to me.
Yeah.
At least you freaking pushed me. I didn't get offended when people pushed me. I got offended when they didn't push me. If I ran something a little cheap, and sometimes I did, if my emotions got away with me, I had crazy emotions, and I gave you a little something extra, and you didn't fucking stand up, then fuck you, man. Go to fucking Servite. That's where those fucking guys go, right? If you're not going to stand up to me, then fuck you, right? Go to Servite.
Not that we still feel that way, Servite.
No,
guys.
Servite's magnificent.
We know Servite guys are as respectable as the rest of us. You
Right.
had your own deal.
That's right.
You guys had what you
tradition,
curious stuff, and that's I know you think that we're the fucking weird ones.
Right.
I get it. We're all the same. We all have some. I was told all my life that one of you guys would be my boss.
That's right.
Servite guy would be your
that
boss.
Happened to me, actually.
And I'm Servite guy's never been my boss. In fact, I hired a coach that worked at Servite, and he was, he was glad to work for me. He would, there was no, it was that part of it was inspiring though. we get to play in football, and you were going to be our bosses someday. We thought that was okay. That
we
was
had to handle it because
reason to fucking go at it.
You're going to get us later. Pay me now, pay me later.
Yeah. Anyway.
I remember when you guys came back my senior year, because obviously when the Ohio group was there, that was taken away from practice, and that was shenanigans and hooligan, and that was Raider shit.
We didn't know any of that though. So, we weren't responding to any of that in any way, shape, or form. That was you guys got to experience something different, and that's why I'm glad that even if it was 1 year and we didn't quite,
I feel blessed.
Achieve those things, that you got to have that experience. It's what I told somebody the other day about our deal. And at Pioneer, where if you got to have the experience of a championship program, and and there's a significant way that you can run a championship program and not win a championship and still have championship values and
ethics
and quality guys,
Sure.
guys that understand that. And that's, those things are the ones that make all this conversation about it so exciting and true to be inspired by, because alpha males, checking their ego at the door and working really hard at their craft, and then having some gifts that you get to go to all those guys in one staff at the same time, guys that have special gifts that go on to do great things in coaching. Like I said, and everybody on that staff had a significant 30-year career at this point, of coaching high school football.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the Ohio guys were there. We talked to Matt about it in one of our podcasts not too long ago, 49 or whatever. I was really not much of a leader as a junior and a sophomore, because I was watching for cues on how far we were going to go, or how far we were going to disobey, how far we were going to. But when you guys came back, and I remember watching Rick ZEPEDA, head football coach at St. Paul, by the way, episode number 6, If you're looking for
all league left corner.
all league freaking left corner,
Yeah,
lockdown guy.
one of the
And I
great,
saw him get in a
one of the
fight.
top five greatest plays in high school history.
Oh yeah, his
Yep.
yeah, he was something else, and he got in a fight in one of the first practices when we put the pads on, and I think he was getting after Danny Dolan or one of the receiver guys, and when he got in a fight, I went, okay, practice stops, and everybody's looking, and I immediately snapped my head to Coach Almeida, and I was looking for his cue, like, okay, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna let this go, or is he not? And he stood there, and there was one flip over on the ground, and there was another flip over on the ground. Blew the whistle. Bam, let's get back. Let's go. Enough. And freaking Rick popped his head up. Oh, that's it. That's all we're gonna. Okay. And we went. And then, but the idea that there was a change, and this is what society is missing. We fought each other with and for respect, and never felt like it was a left or a right or a blue or a red or a conservative or like there was no divide because we had the same goal all the time. And again, I tried to describe it a minute ago. The respect came from, I don't want to stand up to Tom Gordon because he's going to punch me in the face and it's going to hurt, but I have to because I love him that much. And I love this team that much. I can't not. That's what this is all about. We must be willing to fight for.
This is where the guy from Berkeley calls in and says, "Oh yeah, I hear all that kind of stuff, but it's kind of like really fucking
you hurt his feelings,
violence, you know." I mean,
I'm trying to tell you that my feelings were hurt, not the guy that I beat up. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. Is my feeling was hurt if you didn't stand up.
No, I get
the
it.
law it was a jungle thing.
Well, again, but there was a significant, and it was a jungle thing because there was a food chain,
Yeah.
you know, and there was guys clawing to the top no matter what, against all odds. So there was constant competition in those rooms, and you know, which made it, again, like I said, it happens in the coach's office, and the competition is great. The staff, you know, is better, you know, for it, you know. Amongst the players, it was definitely like that.
The first time I saw you guys fight 4 years later in the coach's office, which was honestly, the coach's office was probably a 10 by 12 room.
And it wasn't you guys, because I wasn't fighting. Just so
no, it wasn't Chuck,
okay.
But some other fellas. Some other fellas got passionate about what happened on the field, and they felt wronged, and they were defending their players, their positions, and they fought. And I did the exact same thing, Chuck. I looked and I went, are these guys, these are grown ass men now. Are they going to freaking hate each other? Are they going to have a chip on their shoulder? Is there going to be a grudge? Is there going to be animosity? No, it was the opposite.
Watch them walk out on the field and fucking, yeah. And coach to where nobody gave anybody any quarter, but you know, there was a crossover to, you know, you're my brother. And there was again, which again, that's, you know, when you have that kind of competition amongst teams, I mean, why do you think Alabama and, you know, those guys win like they do? You know, the competition in a daily every day at those places is unbelievable, and the cream rises to the top,
right?
And then there's 20 other guys that want to be the cream. You know, those are great years, right? You know, we're fortunate to have great years in those things, in those sequences of those great programs, right? Again, that evolved into Ahmad, and then it evolved into Mater Dei, and then it evolved into, you know, Servite, and then evolved Bosco, into Mater Dei again, and then evolved into Bosco, and then evolved into, you know, where we're at now. And, you know, those are great things, because we're not talking about Fountain Valley, you know, we're not talking about Edison, we're not talking about freaking Newport Harbor or freaking, you know, almost anybody. We're talking about all those Angelos League schools, right, that dominated the CIF for a lot of fucking years. Right. Long Beach Poly gets mixed in, but I don't know anybody else who has reigned to be in that conversation. You know, Loyola certainly, you know, was a 70s operation. You know, we freaking, you know, I'll never forget watching the kick sail wide and miss the extra point to tie the game against Loyola in the Coliseum in the Fog Bowl, losing 14-13 to those guys, you know. Yeah. And the having the superintendent of Whittier Union High School District had played on that team. So,
That's classic.
and I officially work for him. So,
Fun fact. Fun
yeah,
fact.
unbelievable. Martin Pleward, who has done an unbelievable job in the pandemic, and you
Right.
know, the leadership that he's shown in being able to, again, motivate his troops and the people that work for him to be able to manage this in a way that they took unbelievable care of their teachers and their students and the programs and the money that they allocated to the different things that they did. I have
Yeah,
an
hats off.
unbelievable amount, and he was you know, a Loyola Cubby in 14-13 over my St. Paul swordsman in
Yeah, man.
1974,
That was on the chin. That was on the chin.
75, no, 75. Do me a favor, Tommy, stand up so that we can see your shirt.
Oh yeah.
So if whoever gets to this part of the podcast, if you get this far on our podcast and are still listening, you send put a comment in the comments, and I will give you a free T-shirt. First 10 people to comment. So there you go. So shut the fuck up. If
Yeah.
you're not putting any comments in and you don't want to, that's fine. But I love y'all. I love y'all enough to give you a T-shirt.
I just think that that's such a lost thing. I think the people that are listening are probably going to resonate to some degree with that. You know, it's not, you know, we were allowed to sort of figure it out for ourselves a little bit. You guys at the coaching level were figuring it out. You guys are all, you know, I guess I'm just saying that I was fortunate enough to be a part of the whole circle without being in the administration and without being a teacher at St. Paul. You know, I know that guys like Dan Giroux would fight for me. He would walk into traffic
Well,
for me,
being
and some of
being
these
involved
teachers,
being
you know,
involved in those years, you know, I mean, those were years where, you know, the playing in the Santa Ana Bowl was, you
yeah,
know, a huge deal, and you know, the Citrus College games, and yeah, the whole deal, you know. I mean, those were the days of that league and that
yeah,
time when that thing was, you know, at the top of anything in the nation. And you know, you can say what you want, you know, Texas and Florida and
yeah.
maybe Ohio, and Ohio never beat anybody that I know of. So, you know, I get it. You guys are big time, and
Massillon just beats everybody in their own state.
yeah, I know. And it's like that De La Salle thing. You know, I just
Yeah.
am not sure it really fucking matches up. But no disrespect to y'all, because I know a lot of y'all, and I, you know, I wouldn't want to
They would have won a lot of championships, maybe just not that
so,
many in a row, right?
not here. Yeah, not
Yeah,
here. Not for sure. Yeah, and you know, and in Texas, you know, they got a million public schools that could semi compete probably in the end with the Boscos and those guys, but they don't recruit at all. They're all neighborhood schools for the most part. You know,
yeah.
there's enough kids down there that, you know, kids are not.
Yeah, my buddy in Texas talks about 4,000 kids at the school, 5,000
Yeah,
kids at one high school. It's
yeah,
crazy.
you know,
I
and
think I just think that I like the idea that there was room to really express yourself, as a person, and that didn't and it didn't just be the football team. It was the whole thing, and it was a golden time, and I got to stay in it. That was the beautiful thing about being a coach is I didn't just disconnect because I was graduated. I got to be giving back, and I got to hang with people who taught me, continued to coach me, essentially continued to be coached,
yeah,
which ultimately made me what I think is a fine example of an assistant, where I can be an assistant for anybody. Like I don't have any, it doesn't matter if I'm the boss, like, cause I can know that no matter how small it gets, whether I'm the coordinator, whether I'm a position coach, whether I'm a fucking long snapper coach, I can still, contribute in that area. It's fascinating,
yeah. Well,
and
that's like I said. There's that alpha male thing that when you are able to, you know, as Eminem says, spit real shit to kids
yeah,
that make them again believe in you and believe in enough to be able to follow what you say as the long snapper coach,
mhm,
not the defensive coordinator, not the freaking head coach, not the freaking, you know, whatever. To have it all go all the way down to a Chris Radvansky, where a guy
right,
on crutches helped move that needle, you know, and make that as, you know, a little bit more. Again, you know, I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of staffs that I was on that the dynamics were really fun and really good. You know, our Bosco staff was, you know, something to behold. We can talk about that someday. And you
yeah,
know, our staff out at St. Bernard's was really unique and had some real characters to it. That, but again, there was that certain synergy that if you were able to,
Yeah.
to grab a hold of, ride the lightning
St.
kind of.
Anthony's was electric. That was a
St.
fucking
Anthony's was
electric.
electric.
I was
Yeah, it
like,
was.
you stick your hand on the thing, you're shocked.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt, in a million
Like,
ways.
whoa.
And there's, there's some real cool old guys that would fall right into
Yeah.
that category. The
Yeah,
Sean
man.
Wellborns and,
Yeah.
the guys like that. That
Mickey and Ainge,
yeah,
Larry. Fuck.
yeah, absolutely. And
Dave.
yeah, yeah, and
Whew.
I think that the Mark DeColobus has
Yeah,
had a
Mark.
faction in it, like you said, like a Rad
Mhm.
Vansky, or like a guy when you were coming up and being the guy that everybody contributed because they had that great inspiration to be able to go, well, I want to contribute,
Yeah.
I want to give something to this deal, and which made guys fall in lines with being able to follow the program,
Yeah.
not be overwhelmed by, well, I can't do that, I got to go home, and
Mhm.
my wife is going to be mad at me, kind of thing, and all of a sudden you're doing the things that need to be done to get your position to be freaking
Yeah.
better, and yeah. So anyways, lots of guys, lots of good stories. We'll have several of these conversations, and I think we bring some guys on who would, Miguel Almeida obviously is the next one that really, I'm sure people would really want to be
Yeah.
here, and Bobby Sierra and those guys, for
Yeah.
all you guys. And to be honest with you, I got some cool NAU stuff. I have some Servite guys and some Modern Day guys and some
Yeah.
Bosco guys that might want to come on too and talk. So
For
don't
sure.
think we're going to turn into St. Paul TV, because that's not really what we're shooting for. But all the St. Paul people will relate to what we're talking about today, and that's fun. And I'm glad.
Or put your name in the comments and we'll find out, and subscribe to this damn thing. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, what the hell, man? Put yourself in the comments.
Got like
Nobody
one guy
comments about
commenting,
anything,
Rick.
man. All you got to do is say, man, you guys are better. You get the face for radio. I understand that. You
Yeah.
can say that to me. I don't mind. We've come all this way to try to figure out how to be able to really make some money doing podcasts, and we think we're just having fun enough that somebody will want to listen for 16 or 17 minutes. So
That's right.
we'll have
Apparently.
some. Yeah.
Apparently.
We're ready. We're ready, because if the average person listens to our stuff for 16 minutes, then at 15 minutes we're going to put in some shit that you really want to hear.
That's
So
right.
stay tuned. Check it out. Don't fall short of that 16-minute mark.
All
Yeah.
right. All right, man.
All right. Well,
Let me stop you here. That's good.